It's March, and you're already exhausted. Not from Lent, not from fasting. You're exhausted because the numbers don't add up, and they haven't for a while. The grocery bill, the rent, the credit card sitting there like a quiet accusation on your kitchen counter. You're working harder than you ever have, and it still doesn't feel like enough. And here's the worst part. You can't stop thinking about it. It follows you into Mass. It follows you to bed. You wake up at 3 a.m., and the first thing your mind does, before you even remember where you are, is run the numbers again. What if I lose this client? What if the car breaks down? What if I can't give my kids what they need? You're not lazy. You're not irresponsible. You are a person trying to carry the entire weight of your family's future on your own two shoulders, and it is breaking you. Now, before I go any further, I need to tell you about a man who had nothing, legally, officially, canonically nothing. He took a vow of poverty so severe he couldn't own a single coin. He lived in a small monastery in the mountains of southern Italy. He wore the same rough brown habit every day. He had no bank account, no investment portfolio, no safety net. And yet, that man, Padre Pio of Pietrelcina, built one of the most advanced, most expensive hospitals in post-war Europe. The Casa Sollievo della Sofferenza, the House of Relief of Suffering, a medical center so sophisticated it stunned the Italian government when it opened in 1956. Built from nothing, built without a single dollar to his name. He didn't hustle for it. He didn't stress over spreadsheets at 3 a.m. He used a specific protocol, one he practiced with unusual intensity every March, the month the Church dedicates to St. Joseph. And by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what that protocol is and how to use it for your own finances, your own family, and your own peace. If you are exhausted from carrying your financial fears alone, if you've been white-knuckling your budget and your anxiety is quietly destroying your peace, write right now in the comments, "Sir Joseph, take the wheel of my house." By commenting, you are placing your family's provision under the protection of the man God himself chose to provide for the Holy Family. Let's start at the beginning. Here's what they sold you. Work harder, be smarter, wake up earlier, sleep less, optimize your schedule, your diet, your productivity, your portfolio. Be the CEO of your own life. Control everything, because if you don't, no one will. That's the script. And millions of Catholics have swallowed it whole. And so you grind, you hustle, you refresh your bank app 17 times a day, like the number's gonna change if you just stare at it long enough. You build spreadsheets, you run projections, you calculate worst-case scenarios at midnight, and then calculate them again just to be sure. And here's what that does to your soul. It quietly, methodically convinces you that you are the savior of your family. Not God, you. That's not ambition. That's not responsibility. That's a spiritual trap. And it's one of the enemy's most effective ones because it's disguised as virtue. It looks like being a good provider. It feels like being responsible. But underneath it, there's a slow, creeping belief that God is either absent or not enough. St. John of the Cross wrote about this. He called it spiritual avarice, the disordered attachment to security that keeps a soul from resting in God's hands. And here's what's brutal about it. The more anxious you are about money, the less effective your work actually becomes. Your decisions get clouded, your relationships suffer, your prayer life collapses. Because prayer requires trust, and trust is exactly what financial panic destroys. The hustle culture doesn't just burn out your body, it burns out your faith. And March is where this gets dangerous, because March is Lent. This is supposed to be the season where you strip away the noise and return to God. But most Catholics spend Lent giving up chocolate, while quietly running a full-time anxiety operation about their finances in the background. The enemy doesn't care if you give up Netflix for 40 days. He cares that you never surrender your need for control. Because a Catholic who is paralyzed by financial fear is a Catholic who prays less, gives less, trusts less, and serves less. You're neutralized. You're too busy being your own God, frantically trying to hold everything together, to let the real God actually work. There's a different way, and Padre Pio found it. You need to understand who Padre Pio actually was, because the sanitized version won't prepare you for what he did. He wasn't a gentle, soft-spoken mystic who floated above the problems of ordinary life. He was a fighter. He wrestled with demons, literally, in his cell at night. The monks in the monastery heard the sounds. Furniture moved. His body bore marks the next morning. He bore the wounds of Christ in his hands, feet, and side for 50 years. 50 years of physical suffering every single day without ceasing. He heard confessions for up to 16 hours straight. People came from every continent, politicians, peasants, generals, and beggars, all standing in the same line, waiting for the same man. He could read souls. He could smell sin the way you smell smoke. People tried to hide things in confession, and he named them out loud before they opened their mouths. This was not a passive man. And yet, when it came to money, he was the most radically surrendered human being you will ever study. Here is the fact that should stop you cold. The Casa Sollievo della Sofferenza cost the equivalent of hundreds of millions of dollars in today's money. It required specialized equipment, world-class surgeons, construction crews, ongoing operating costs. It served the poorest region of Italy, and it was built by a man who could not legally possess a single lira. When people asked him how he intended to fund it, his answer was always the same. St. Joseph will provide. Not, I have a fundraising strategy. Not, I've secured major donors. Not, I've run the projections. St. Joseph will provide. And when bills came in that had no funding behind them, and they came in constantly, during construction, during the war, during the economic devastation of post-war southern Italy, Padre Pio did something that should feel either insane or deeply convicting, depending on where your faith actually is. He walked to the statue of St. Joseph in the monastery. He placed the unpaid bill at the statue's feet, and he said out loud words to this effect. This is your problem now. You are the provider. Handle it. Then he walked away. Not with the casual indifference of a man who didn't care, with the rock-solid confidence of a man who had transferred the file to the right authority and trusted completely that the authority would act. And act he did. Donations arrived from anonymous sources. Materials were provided at cost or donated outright. The project that had no earthly reason to succeed, succeeded completely, magnificently, in a way that stunned everyone who watched it happen, everyone except Padre Pio, who seemed almost unsurprised, because he already knew who was running the operation. Before I show you the truth that changes everything, the actual protocol Padre Pio used, the specific steps, what to pray, what to surrender, and how to do it right now in March, I want to make sure you already have the weapon in your hands. Because what you're about to hear requires more than just watching a video once. It requires practice. It requires depth. It requires someone to walk with you through it. That's why I want to point you to something that has helped thousands of Catholics pray with real power and real faith. The power of the Rosary with Padre Pio, miracles, protection, and divine graces. This is not a generic prayer book. It's built on Padre Pio's own teachings on the Rosary, the same man we've been talking about, the prayers he used to fight, to intercede, to surrender, and to receive. It includes a 30-day prayer guide, testimonies of documented miracles, and specific prayers for protection and healing that Padre Pio himself passed on. It is a small investment in your soul, and right now, in this month, in this season, it could be the most important thing you put in your hands. The link is pinned in the comments. Get it before you finish this video. Now. The secret. The protocol Padre Pio used wasn't complicated. It was an act of transfer. Here's what that means spiritually. When you carry financial anxiety, you are, whether you realize it or not, acting as the primary provider of your family. You've taken God's role, not out of arrogance, out of fear, but the result is the same. You are holding something that was never meant to be in your hands alone. Padre Pio understood something about Saint Joseph that most Catholics have forgotten. Saint Joseph was not chosen randomly. God, the creator of every galaxy, every ocean, every law of physics, looked at all of human history and chose one specific man to be the earthly provider and protector of his own son. Think about what that selection process means. God trusted St. Joseph with Jesus, with Mary, with the safety of the Holy Family in the middle of a political massacre, a flight into a foreign country, years of poverty and hiddenness. St. Joseph didn't fail, not once. So when Padre Pio placed those unpaid bills at St. Joseph's feet, he wasn't doing a religious ritual. He was making a theologically precise act of delegation. He was saying, "You are the provider God appointed. I am placing this under your authority. Do what you were made to do." That is the secret. Not a formula, not a magic prayer. An act of genuine, deliberate, faith-filled surrender, transferring the CEO position of your financial life from your own exhausted hands to the man God himself trusted with everything. Let me tell you who St. Joseph actually is. Not the plaster statue in the corner of the church, not the quiet, slightly forgettable figure standing behind Mary in every nativity scene. Not the man who barely gets mentioned in Scripture and seems to exist mostly as a backdrop. That version of St. Joseph is a lie, and the enemy has worked very hard to make it the dominant one. Because a Catholic who underestimates St. Joseph is a Catholic who won't call on him, and a Catholic who won't call on him is a Catholic who keeps carrying everything alone. Here is the St. Joseph the Church actually knows. He is called the terror of demons. That title is not poetic, it is theological. It comes from the Church's own tradition. St. Teresa of Avila wrote that she never asked St. Joseph for anything without receiving it. She was so convinced of his power that she dedicated her reformed Carmelite monasteries to him. She said flat out that other saints seemed to help with specific needs, but St. Joseph helps with everything. Everything. The reason St. Joseph is the terror of demons is directly connected to his role. He was the guardian of Jesus, the protector of the Word made flesh. Every demonic force that wanted to destroy the Christ child, Herod's soldiers, the spiritual darkness surrounding the flight into Egypt, the constant threat against the Holy Family, had to go through Joseph first. He stood between the enemy and God incarnate. That is who you are invoking when you place your finances under his protection. And here's what this means for your home specifically. The enemy's attack on your family doesn't just come through moral temptation, it comes through financial pressure. It comes through the exhaustion of debt, the shame of not providing enough, the quiet desperation that makes a man short-tempered with his wife and distant from his children. It comes through the stress that keeps you from praying, from being present, from being the spiritual head of your household. And Saint Joseph, the man who protected the most important family in human history from the most dangerous spiritual attack in human history, is exactly who you need standing at the door of your home right now. Padre Pio knew this. That's why he didn't just pray to St. Joseph casually, the way you might toss a quick intention before rushing out the door. He treated St. Joseph as an active, powerful, present authority, a real person with real power who was genuinely in charge of provision. And that shift in how you see St. Joseph changes everything about how you pray to him. Tomorrow morning, your alarm goes off. Before your feet hit the floor, before you reach for your phone, before the anxiety machine in your chest boots up and starts running today's numbers, you stop. 2 seconds of stillness, and then you speak, out loud. Saint Joseph, I place my finances under your authority today. My job, my business, my debts, my fears, I transfer them to you. You provided for Jesus and Mary. Provide for my family. I trust you. That's the morning anchor. 31 mornings. Every single one of them before anything else. Here's why it has to be out loud. When you say it silently, it stays inside your head, and your head is exactly the battlefield the enemy already controls. When you say it with your voice, something changes. The words leave your body. They enter the room. The enemy hears them, heaven hears them, and some part of you that is deeper than thought believes them differently. Padre Pio never whispered his faith. Neither should you. Now, the second piece of the protocol, and this is the one that will test you. The anxiety is going to hit you during the day. Not once, multiple times. You're going to be driving to work, and the fear about the car payment is going to land on your chest like a stone. You're going to be sitting in a meeting, and your mind is going to pull up the credit card balance without your permission. You're going to lie down to sleep, and the numbers are going to start running again behind your eyes. Don't fight it. Don't suppress it. Don't tell yourself to think positive, but name it and hand it over right there, in the car, in the meeting, in the dark. St. Joseph, the fear about the mortgage just hit me. It's yours now. I'm walking away. Then you actually walk away from it. In your mind, you set it down and you turn your back. You don't pick it back up. Not your problem anymore. This is a skill. The first week, you'll pick it back up 30 seconds after you set it down. That's fine. Set it down again. The second week, you'll last 5 minutes. Keep going. By the end of March, you will notice, and this will surprise you, that the fear visits less often, because the enemy stops sending a weapon that keeps getting disarmed. The third piece is physical, and don't skip it. And on March 31st, the last night of the month, take a pen and a piece of paper. Write down one specific financial fear you surrendered this month, the one that cost you the most to let go. Date it, fold it, put it in a drawer. In 6 months, open that drawer. What you read will stop you cold, not because everything will be fixed, but because you will see, written in your own hand, how much of what terrified you, God handled. I want to give you 2 moments, not theories, not theology, but real things that happened to real people who practiced exactly what we've been talking about. The first is from the construction of the Casa Sollievo itself. It was 1947. Post-war Italy was devastated. The south was the poorest region in the country. Padre Pio had been given a small sum of money from an American Catholic relief organization, a starting point, nothing more. The plans for the hospital were drawn. The need was overwhelming. The funding was almost non-existent. At one point during the early construction phase, the project faced a financial wall that had no earthly solution. The contractors needed payment. There was nothing in the account. The people around Padre Pio were visibly panicking. They ran the numbers, they made calls, they scrambled. Padre Pio was calm. He went to the chapel. He prayed. He placed the situation explicitly, verbally, under St. Joseph's authority. He came back and told his brothers not to worry. Within days, a donation arrived from a source no one had contacted, in an amount that covered exactly what was needed. Not more, not less, exactly what was needed. That is the precision of divine provision. It doesn't give you a cushion of excess so you can feel comfortable and stop depending on God. It gives you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. So your faith keeps growing instead of going dormant. The second testimony is more recent and closer to home. A Catholic father in the United States, a man carrying significant debt, a failing small business, and the particular shame that comes when a man feels he cannot provide for his children, began the March Surrender Protocol after hearing about Padre Pio's practice from his parish priest. He placed a small St. Joseph statue on his kitchen counter. Every morning for 31 days, he surrendered out loud. Every time the anxiety hit, he transferred it. He told his priest afterward that the first thing that changed wasn't his bank account, it was his presence at the dinner table. He stopped being the absent, distracted, quietly desperate man his children had learned to read as "Dad's stressed again." He was there, fully there. His wife noticed within the first week. His kids started coming to him with things they hadn't brought to him in months. And then, in the third week of March, a contract came through that reversed the business situation entirely. He said it plainly. "I don't know if I would have been in the right state of mind to even see that opportunity clearly if I hadn't surrendered the fear first." That is what St. Joseph does. He doesn't just provide for your finances. He restores the father to his family. Here is the truth you need to carry out of this video. You were never meant to do this alone. The grinding, the obsessing, the 3 a.m. number running, the white-knuckled grip on your family's future, that was never God's design for you. That is not strength. That is a man trying to play a role that was never assigned to him. And it is costing you your peace, your presence, and your prayer life. Padre Pio, a man with nothing legally, officially, canonically nothing, built something that outlasted him by decades and still serves thousands of patients today. He did it by understanding one thing with absolute clarity: God is the provider. St. Joseph is the protector. And my job is to work hard, pray honestly, and get out of the way. That is the financial secret of March. Not a new income stream, not a budgeting hack. A transfer of authority from your exhausted hands to the hands of the man God trusted with Jesus. This Lent, you have an opportunity that most Catholics will miss entirely. While everyone else is giving up sugar and calling it transformation, you can do something that actually reshapes the spiritual architecture of your home. You can invite St. Joseph to take his rightful place as the protector and provider of your family. You can wake up every morning in March and choose, deliberately, verbally, repeatedly, to trust instead of control. And to make sure you don't walk this road without the right weapons, I want you to go to the pinned comment right now and get The Power of the Rosary with Padre Pio, Miracles, Protection, and Divine Graces. The prayers in that guide, built on Padre Pio's own teachings, are exactly what you need to anchor this 31-day surrender in real, deep, combat-ready prayer. Not routine prayer, not empty repetition. The kind of prayer that Padre Pio said goes all the way up. The link is pinned in the comments. It is a small investment in your soul. Do it now, before the video ends and the algorithm pulls you somewhere else. March is here, St. Joseph is ready. The only question is whether you are finally ready to let go. True peace in your home doesn't begin when the debt is paid. It begins the morning you stop believing you are the one who has to pay it alone. Start tomorrow morning. Out loud, one sentence. St. Joseph, this is yours. That's it, that's the whole secret.